Tired of struggling with chronic pain or discomfort, GI issues, hormonal imbalances, low energy levels, or PMS? Why do we put up with so much pain and discomfort for so long? Lack of answers and a broken medical system doesn't help. It's hard to know how to support ourselves or find the right person to listen and help us to make change. This is where Rita Johnson with Divine Mercy Nutritional Care can help you. Divine Mercy Nutritional Care is a holistic nutrition practice that can help you learn to eliminate achy joints, fatigue, brain fog, painful periods, and overall discomfort. So stop missing out on enjoying life because you don't feel up to it or are too tired. Rita will help you feel better than you ever thought possible in just days. Set up a free, no obligation consultation with Rita to get started today and wake up to a better tomorrow. Contact Rita at healthandhormones.org. I do want women to know that there is an alternative to suppressing their bodies with hormones, that they can see their body as a good and they can live in that body holistically.
Totally. Oh my gosh. It's amazing.
Join co-hosts Jamie Rocci and Teresa Kenny as they educate women about the beauty of the feminine design and empower women to take charge of their health.
They're going to be so amazing. You're going to be so empowered by understanding your feminine genius and your hormone genius. I don't think I could live my whole life knowing this and not sharing it with anyone.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hormone Genius podcast. We're going to be talking about something I am so excited to talk about, which is weightlifting, strength training. It's something that I think every woman should care about, should know about. And we have a friend that we brought on to talk about it, someone who's maybe wouldn't declare herself some professional expert on it, but has been passionate also about weightlifting for her life. We have Emily with us. And what's exciting is that Emily, she has 6 kids, 5 of them are young women. And so I think like a lot of us, we want to pass on information to other women in our lives that we think is important for their hormonal health and their health in general. So we're excited to have Emily on today, but a few things that I just want to, kind of off the bat, just talk about in terms of weightlifting. It's something that I have been doing, something that I don't always love, something that my husband pushes me to do practically every day. And so I'm excited to almost have some more motivation and inspiration to continue my journey in it. But just statistically, I just want our listeners to know that, weightlifting is something that women don't always believe is important for them. And right now, about 20% of women in the world only do weightlifting twice a week. So we don't have a lot of women that love weightlifting yet, but we hope to change that. And also, I think just to motivate you right off the bat, in a study recently on longevity, it was found that grip strength was the most important factor to identify longevity. And so this is a huge kind of observational kind of study of over 500,000 people. Half of them were women, and it found that those who had the highest grip strength had the least amount of premature death from all kind of cause mortalities that are big, like heart disease and cancer and lung disease and those types of things. So grip strength is something that you will improve through strength and weight training. So that's just something right off the bat I wanted to share. But thank you, Emily, for being with us. And we'll have you share why you're so passionate also about weightlifting.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
All right. Well, right off the bat, just tell us your kind of how you got into weightlifting and why you think it's important for health.
Okay. Well, the short answer is my husband. All good things, right? He's a great man. But just to give you some background, I was a soccer player, a competitive soccer player. Teresa, you were a soccer player too, right?
Yeah, awesome.
You're both collegiate athletes, correct?
Yes.
So, that's all I knew about getting in shape was that kind of workout. But then I even played into my first 2 pregnancies. And then I got into long distance running into my 4th pregnancy, and my husband also got into long distance running. So after his first marathon, he came away with like the time that he put into it. And the effort, the bandwidth to plan all of these runs and time, and all of the time away from family and all the eating and the havoc that it wreaked on his body, it just wasn't worth it. The juice wasn't worth the squeeze. And so he did a bunch of research and said, hey, let's let's do some weightlifting. Would you like to do some weightlifting? And, any mother of I had 4 kids at the time. So any mother knows that time with your husband is so precious. So at that time in my life, I was like, yes, let's weightlift. And I thought, oh, we'll just pick up some dumbbells and throw them around and we'll have fun. But my husband is not that kind of person. He's an all-in kind of person. Thank you, Lord. And at the time, I had become very dear friends with this woman named Jenny. We were running partners. And I told her, yeah, Dave wants to get into weightlifting, but I'm afraid I'm going to get too bulky. And she said, no, you have got to weightlift. I was in the best shape of my life when I was weightlifting. And that just stopped me in my tracks. I had never heard someone say they were in the best shape of their life when they were weightlifting. And she knew her husband was like a bodybuilding championship or something, had won some state championship. And so, that motivated me further. So my husband and I got into this weightlifting. We did it 4 days a week. Primarily, heavy weightlifting. It followed kind of like a bodybuilding program. And we started to see so many changes. We loved the effects and we loved doing something together. At the time, after about a year, my friend Jenny and I, she got back into weightlifting. We started weightlifting with friends, and friends would ask us we'd go to the gym together. We'd have great time, great community. And Jenny and I started a little fitness coaching business called Soul Strength. And that lasted for about 5 or so years. And so we wanted to educate women, give them the confidence to walk into a male-dominated weight room, to know how to construct workouts, to know what kind of workouts to do them effectively and safely. And it was a privilege to work with these women. It was so much fun. So we did that. Since I think between the two of us, we've probably had 5 or 6 more babies, 4 to 6 more babies. And we both homeschool. So that has since stopped. But yeah, we love working with women.
Oh my gosh, Emily, this is incredible. I love this so much I love it for lots of reasons. The 2 reasons I want to mention are, 1, that you weightlift with your husband, because I think of Teresa Kenny right here. She transferred, and I'll have her, you can talk about it in a second, Teresa, about like your gym and how like you and your husband are on this fitness journey. How beautiful is it to do with your husband and these goals? And then secondly, that when you were in business, that you had this thought of how to make it more comfortable for women to walk into the male-dominated gym. Because as female athletes, I can say that probably isn't as uncomfortable for me as it may be for others, because I know my way around the weight room, but most women don't. And I think sometimes I underestimate how fearful that can be for any person, not just women, but men as well, who aren't like they just don't have any experience with weightlifting. So I love that so much. I also want to say one more thing before I ask a question. You mentioned how your husband and I think you were saying, you got into long distance running, right? Yeah. And your husband was training for that marathon, and how the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. Is that the saying that you said?
Yes.
How true is that? And I'm not looking down on long distance running or marathon running at all. I think that that's great for some people. But I remember having that kind of goal for myself after I was done with school in college and getting more into long distance running, and how I would just get so injured all the time. I was not a healthy version of myself. I couldn't keep up with the calories. I was constantly getting injured. And so even just having a small goal, like a 5K, is like the only distance, like no more than a 5K personally. This girl, Jamie, I don't want to run past that. So anyway, I'm just glad that we are talking about other forms of exercise that might be quicker, faster, not as toiling on the physical body in terms of also family life and all that. So all that to say, I'm glad you mentioned it. Okay. So I want you to share with us, what are some of those tips? Like when women walk into the gym, what are some ways that we can be more comfortable in a male-dominated weight room?
Well, I think number 1, arming yourself with knowledge is one of the best things you can do. When you're confident that way, and the ways to do that would be to have a trainer, invest in an online program, but you can really have an effective workout if you are doing the research yourself. There's no reason you can't. I would also say it's great to go with a friend. But the truth is, these men, they're there to work out. They're not there to look at you, and that's just how it goes. So when you walk in, it really helps with the confidence to arm yourself with knowledge, like I said. But really, they're there to work out. They're not looking at you. You're not looking at them. So I think that's what I would tell someone who's fearful of walking into a gym full of men.
This makes me think, Emily, of back in the day. I think it was probably like 2000, 2001 when I first got my first gym membership, and I went to, it was called Gold's Gym. There was a female room at the time. And I don't know how often they do this at gyms because I don't go to gyms anymore, but there was a female room. And I remember thinking like, oh, thank goodness, like I can just go to the female room. But the funny thing is that in that room, they had a few weight machines, but they were like, the abductor, like the thigh machine. There wasn't any free weights. It was obvious that they didn't think women should be weightlifting by what they put in the room. And at that time, like, certainly I wouldn't have ever thought, weightlifting for me would have been, not something really on my radar as important as a woman, that it would be more important to be cardio or to be lean, right? So this idea of being leanness. So what I want to address with this question, because you brought it up, is that whole idea that women can bulk, which my husband talks about all the time because he's like, gets angry. He's like, there are so few women in the world that could ever bulk. It is not physiologically possible because of how women are made in literally kind of like their muscle fibers. So like women have a lot more types of what we call endurance muscle fibers versus muscle fibers that actually build, they're building fibers basically. So tell us about bulking and women and that fear and how we can dispel the myth for women that they are going to get big by weightlifting.
Yeah, I mean, there are many myths about weightlifting. That was mine. I'm going to get bulky. And the truth is, unless you are taking performance-enhancing drugs, you lack the testosterone to build big muscles. You will never be Mr. Universe. So it just won't happen. But working out, lifting heavy weights in particular is what's going to get you that elusive toned look that everyone's after. So especially those videos, cardio videos where there's these women who are doing these workouts and they have really toned muscles and arms and cut arms. They're probably not just doing that video. They are probably also lifting heavy weights in the gym. And so, and a lot of times like 135 pounds of muscle looks a lot different than 135 pounds of like having a lower lean muscle mass. So it looks a lot better on.
That's so true about like those videos, because you get those videos of those ladies with like a 5-pound dumbbell and they look pretty ripped, but I'm like looking at them like there is no way like lifting that dumbbell 100 times is going to build muscle for you. So again, this is, what in the weight world they call progressive overload. And one of the people that I follow is Stacy Sims, who is a, former triathlon, now works with weightlifting and helping people understand how hormones are really important to consider, that women are not small men and that we need to train our bodies in unique ways. But she says the type of weightlifting that you should be doing to gain muscle is that 3 to 6 rep. Completely different mindset, right? I mean, I think as a woman to be like, what? 3 to 6 reps? What are you talking about? So let's talk about why that type of weightlifting is what really signals muscle growth to the body.
Yeah, well, it really depends on what your goals are. If your goals are muscle endurance or prevention of injury, then you can go with a larger rep set with shorter time in between those sets. But if your goal is strength building, and we'll go into the benefits of building muscle mass, but then you really want to have a lower rep range. And I've heard it argued that you can the rep range is like 5. So you're going to be doing an exercise, lifting as heavy a weight, keeping perfect form. So your form is not breaking down. And that's how it's safe and effective. But lifting perfect weight for about 5 reps, but always leaving 1 in the tank, you know? And I've also heard it argued, and this could be just saying this for practical reasons, that if you're at home, you can kind of go up in that rep range, but as long as you're reaching that maximum, as long as you're reaching kind of towards burnout, like you're almost ready to stop. So, but it's the type 2 fibers, I believe, that you're talking about, the type 2 fibers that you're activating there. And it's just that it's the biggest bang for your buck, building muscle mass.
What would you say are some things you mentioned just now about keeping proper form? Not breaking down our form so that we do not get injured. So what are some tips for women who are wanting to get started with weightlifting? Maybe they've never really done much at all. How do they know they're keeping proper form? And what are some warning signs that they're breaking form and maybe heading to possible injury?
Well, I know when I started out, I was with my husband, but we also recorded ourselves. So we recorded ourselves without weight first, just to make sure that our form was tight. I also think that it's important to go in with a mindset that this isn't about just getting done. Like it's in the doing. The strength training is in the doing. It's not just getting done. And we have the mindset, I just got to get done. I got to get through this. We tend to focus on let me just knock out 20 reps real fast. A lot of weight training, a lot of strength building is about muscle to mind connection. So you're really taking your time and picturing these muscles contracting with the exercise you're doing. And I think that's a great way to perfect your form. So you're really taking your time doing it. Another warning sign, I would say that for a lot of us who've grown up in the cardio world, it was like a workout has to be grueling to be effective. You have to be sweating and, it has to hurt basically. And that's not how it is for strength training. So you might have improper form if it hurts. Like it should not hurt. It could burn a little bit, but it should not hurt. Mm-hmm. So I think those are the kind of what I would look for before going into the weight room.
Something else too, I was just thinking as you were talking, I love that idea of recording yourself. And it made me think too, in gyms or in Teresa's garage, there's mirrors, looking at yourself with the form and making sure, you're standing up straight, you're engaging your core, you're not slumped over, because a lot of people are slumped over when they do their work. And you mentioned it too at the very beginning. Maybe it's this idea of some of the ladies listening now, you may be thinking, I really want to get into weight training, but I don't know the basics. You mentioned, Emily, how getting a personal trainer, even for a little bit of time, just to kind of show the ropes, correcting us and giving us some basic things. I think that would be a very worthy investment, not just in, being productive with building muscle, but even just in decreasing possible injury into the future. So let's kind of work through what are some easy starting points for women in regards to building muscle. Let's kind of work through the core muscle groups and give maybe some examples of ways that we can begin building muscle as women. Okay.
Do you mean just getting started? What would a typical workout look like?
Yeah. Anatomy of a workout.
Anatomy of a workout. Okay, great. So I think first you'd have to assess how much time you have. So let's just say, okay, I have 3 days a week that I can work out. We'll just start with there. Typically, what you're going to do is, if you have 3 days a week that you have time to dedicate towards working out, we're going to decide once on your plan, and we're going to use that same plan for the next 8 to 10 weeks. So for 3 days a week, just something simple, and you can Google these, but we do a push-pull leg workout. And again, this is just off the top of my head. So your push day would look like something like a chest press, a military press, and you're always going to start each workout. So for push day, you're going to always start each workout with a big compound exercise. Compound exercises are exercises that recruit multiple muscle groups. So for example, with your push day, you would be doing a standing barbell press or standing dumbbell press. It's mainly taxes the shoulders or the deltoids, but you're also engaging your core, your shoulders, your lats, posture, even your glutes are being used and utilized during this compound exercise. After a quick little warm up, you would do, we'll say, 3 sets of these exercises. So you would Decide your rep range. And if you're just starting out and you want to perfect your form, I would start with a rep range of 8 to 12. And if you are more experienced, I would start with a smaller rep range of 4 to 6, 4 to 8, depending on where you're at. And you would do that exercise, aim for a rep range, and you would always write it down. And after doing that exercise, you would rest for about 3 minutes. Especially with that big compound exercise, you can even rest up to 3 to 5 minutes because you are going to get maximum effort, maximum building from your muscles by taking that time to rest, which is so hard to do. And again, when you are like a cardio-focused person, resting in between sets seems counteractive. It's silly. But it is really important and it's effective in your workouts to do so. So you're going to start with a big compound exercise, do about 3 sets of those. And then after that, you'd work down to different muscle groups, and you'd end with maybe a 5th exercise with more of an isolation exercise. So if it's your chest day, if it's your push day, we'd start with a shoulder press, then a chest press, and then some kind of incline dumbbell. And then you would do a tricep press, which is a very isolated exercise. And with those isolated exercises, you can rest for a lot shorter in between sets. So that's an example of a push day. A pull day would be, you're thinking like your back and biceps day. So it's starting with a big deadlift, and then working your way down from there, doing some back exercises. Did you want me to get specific with, okay. So a deadlift, starting with a deadlift on my back day. From there, you can do if you're in a gym, cable rows, back rows. And I like to end my back day with bicep curls or something that's your isolation exercise. So I'm doing about 4 to 5 to 6 exercises, 3 to 4 sets of each of those exercises. And again, I'm always starting with my largest compound exercise. For my leg day, it really depends on what your goals are, but many women start with a back squat as their big compound exercise. From there, training glutes is really popular right now, I think, in the world, but I would argue that it's just so important to train your glutes, especially for women. We train our pelvic floor that way. It's a deep core muscle, and especially if we're sitting all day, glutes need to be activated. So I'm a big proponent of glute training. So I usually start my leg days with some kind of really heavy hip thrust. And then after that, I go to Romanian deadlifts. And again, I do 3 sets of those, and I try to aim for either 6 to 8 reps per exercise, except for that hip thrust. That my first compound exercise is always going to have the least amount of rep range is what I'm going for. So just an example, hip thrusts, then maybe a Romanian deadlift, lunges, and ending with some kind of abductor exercises. I love to use bands, those loop bands at the end. Teresa, do you guys have any loop bands or resistant bands in your home gym?
We have it all. And so again, it's been brought up. I have a garage. We have 6 boys and 2 girls. So at some point our house just became too small. And so our garage became a converted space to put a lot of boys in for activity. And then over the years, we've just gathered more equipment. So I swear we could sell memberships at this point. And then over Christmas, again, my husband did a makeover. Now there's gym mirrors and a big TV. And, the high school that he works for was getting rid of some equipment, like a big military shoulder press kind of thing and a hamstring curl. So we have it all. And we have, yes, those the bands and a pull-up bar that's bolted into the beam above the garage. So that's my goal, Emily, I have a lot of goals, and I feel like when people listen to you, they probably were just tired hearing about it, because I know I was. And if you're not a weightlifter, you're like, I am so overwhelmed right now. And I'll just tell you, like, for me, like when I go in there, I kind of pick just 3 to 4 exercises. So I'm just, for the person who's starting out, you don't have to, like everything Emily explained, she's been doing this for years. And she's perfected her ability to have technique in those exercises. So again, if you're just starting out, start with 1 or 2 exercises. You do not have to do this all at once. And the other thing is, I would just say, and I don't know what you think about this, Emily, is deadlifts. You have to be very careful with deadlifts and form. So if you're like, oh, look up a deadlift and then go out and do it, I would just caution you, just from personal experience, if you have any back issues or your core strength is not already pretty good, a deadlift done incorrectly could mess your back. So this is why it's important maybe to work with a trainer or really just kind of at least have somebody, like we have husbands that were really into weightlifting. They help us with technique as well. But I would just say I would be careful with that one. But as a woman who has never been able to do this, my goal is to, by the time I'm 50, be able to do a couple pull-ups. Because they are so hard. Oh my goodness, pull-ups are so hard. And I just think it would be cool to be able to do one.
That was one of my goals as well. I had never been able to do pull-ups ever. And it's a progression. I used a lot of bands. I was also deadlifting, was still unable to do pull-ups. So yeah, I used a lot of bands and eventually somehow got there. So you'll get there.
Yeah, I know I will.
Something that I went to, I don't know what he was. He not a personal trainer, but he was a guy that kind of assesses like the strength of your muscles. Like he does these tests and stuff because I was having so many hip issues. I've had hip issues for over 10 years, and low back and all these things. And you mentioned your deep core. I think that's what we called it, right? Your deep core. And I wasn't activating any deep core muscles. So, a lot of the lifting that I would do was just my back. So I wasn't active, like you were talking about glute work. I don't know how you referenced it, but like making sure your glutes are firing. And it took me literally, people would say, you need to fire your glutes. You need to activate your glutes when you're lifting. You need to activate your core. And in my head at the time, I had no idea what they meant. Now I know, now I do understand. So how do you explain that to women, or how do you just in your brain know when you are doing a squat, for instance? Like I can share when I think about doing a squat and activating my glutes. I didn't know this before. I like literally tilt my pelvis up when I'm standing, activate. I never had done that. Almost where, if you're wearing really tight leggings that you're like, it would wedge in between your butt cheeks. You know what I mean? Like you're bringing it up and you're clenching your butt and you're activating those glutes. I can say for years, I never ever did that when I did a squat. And I had so many issues, I think, because of that. So I don't know what comes to mind. And again, I think this is a big issue for women, especially women who've had children, who have a weak core, injury.
Yeah. So
I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And I felt that way mostly after I've had babies. Exactly. And after going to a physical therapist, a pelvic floor therapist, physical therapist, she, it wasn't like the first time or the second time. She had to use so many visuals with me. And it finally took like one certain visual for me to really take and make my own. So very similar to you, Jamie, in that I think it takes a lot of different analogies for our brains for it to work. It takes the perfect analogy for it to work with making that connection with your body. And especially, I do believe that there's a trifecta of workouts, I think, for women: strength training, deep core pelvic work, and moving your body in a way that you love. Like, I just think that those three things are the way that we should try to reorient our fitness lives, or try to orient our fitness life to better our lives outside of the fitness world.
I also want to just bring up, health benefits. And I think you were going to, go into this, Emily, so I'll let you do that. But just, obviously, like, bone density, super important. Without more muscle mass, we will lose bone density. And this is particularly true of women who will go into menopause and postmenopause. You can lose half of your lean muscle mass by the time you're 80 if you do nothing to help keep your muscle mass. So it is so important for prevention of risk factor for women to consider strength training, not just when you get to menopause, but before, because you want to keep whatever you have. But it's also good for depression. They've done studies on men and women that strength training decreases depression. Mm-hmm. It, allows for improved cardiovascular health. In fact, studies have shown that you would think, again, cardio or running would be better for cardio health, but actually strength training improves glucose metabolism and cardiovascular health. So, and studies more than actually cardio training. So what other health benefits, Emily, can women look forward to with weightlifting?
Yeah, you've hit on a lot of the great ones, which was increases bone density. So it decreases their chance for osteoporosis. It along with that, because especially I think I just read the study that people who have fallen at the age of 60, 6 out of 10 of those people do not go on to live independent lives. So if our bones are strong, we're going to prevent falls or injury after falls. And you also mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, which is grip strength. Grip strength is one of the biggest factors for longevity, and it can be improved with strength training. But the obvious is that you are also increasing your muscle mass, which we all know, and we lose muscle mass starting every decade, starting in your 30s, about 8%. And it's just this high maintenance tissue. Your metabolism is going to be increased because you have more muscle. It's a high maintenance tissue. It's called an expensive organ. And if you're using it, your body is going to be convinced that, I still have to maintain this muscles because we're putting priority towards these muscles. So it's going to take the effort to maintain the muscle, and you're going to be burning more calories with the more muscles you have. It does help to, with increased muscle mass, your body has the ability to store glucose as glycogen in your muscles, so it stabilizes blood sugar levels. It's been known to decrease your A1C. I think there's a study done that when you're introducing 2 to 3 days of strength training, they did aerobic training and strength training. Aerobic training did nothing to the A1C. Strength training decreased your A1C. So these patients who are type 2 diabetics, their diabetes were better controlled with strength training. Also, I thought this was really interesting, but because during muscle contractions, you have more lymph drainage, it increases lymph drainage, and it results in more immune cells. So your immunity increases during strength training.
Since we're talking about, again, specifically the muscle, I do not want to end this podcast without bringing this up because my husband will kill me, is creatine and hydration of muscle. So can you speak to that? So I was struggling, Emily, to take my creatine daily. My husband would put it next to the kitchen sink, and, it's a powder usually form. And
your husband and my husband need to get together.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So literally this is chewable creatine because I was doing a poor job of putting the powder. I have this thing about powders. I cannot put powders and things in swallow. It had no taste. It wasn't even like it was a problem. It's just whatever. So now I have my chewable, which is next to my coffee pot because that's where I told him to put it because I would take it. So let's talk about creatine and why it's so important for helping improve muscle performance, endurance, strength training, and there's a lot of other benefits as well.
Yeah, so I'm laughing because my husband every day is like, did you take your creatine? Did you take your creatine? And I was a little nervous about taking creatine, but he told me it's one of the most researched supplements out there because I think maybe in the 90s, creatine was a big thing. So they started doing a lot of these studies on creatine, and they found it to be very healthy. And I think more research has come out now even about the benefits of creatine, but it does help to reduce dehydration and muscle cramping, injuries to your muscles and bones, ligaments. Those are I just know it helps to supply that extra energy to your muscles. And so if you're doing that, you're going to only benefit and reap the benefits of strength training more.
Yeah. So it doesn't, make you gain weight if you take it in an appropriate dose. Again, that is something that was in the 90s. Young men were taking so much, they would actually bloat a little bit. But just imagine if your muscle is not hydrated, it cannot perform well. So a hydrated muscle performs better and it's less prone to injury, but it also hydrates the brain. And I know on one of Andrew Huberman's podcasts, he talked about creatine being used actually post-concussion to actually heal the brain and prevent headaches. So there's a lot of health benefits. And no, it won't increase or decrease your kidney function. That's another myth about creatine. So as a woman, if you're doing strength training, it would be, it is hands down considered a very safe thing to do to take about 5 grams of creatine daily. You don't need to take more than that. You don't need to load it or anything like that. Just 5 grams of creatine daily, and you'll stay hydrated in your muscles and your brain.
Well, I was going to ask too, this isn't like a post-workout thing. Like you can just do it every morning when you're taking your supplements, drinking your water, yada, yada. It's interesting because I'm like, I have creatine in my cabinet. And I'm like, oh, it's because Teresa, you told me to get it after I hit my head real hard.
That's
Remember?
right.
Yeah. Gosh. Okay. The one thing I was going to say is ladies, do not forget, leverage your estrogen genius during your cycle. So when you are in your follicular phase, ovulatory phase, that is when your estrogen levels are the highest. It's when your testosterone levels are definitely the highest. You're going to build muscle faster. There will be a lesser chance of injury. So if you are going to lift those heavier weights and kind of push it a bit with the proper form, of course, doing it during that follicular ovulatory phase is going to benefit you greatly. So that was what I wanted to be sure to inject into this conversation because we're the Hormone Genius podcast, of course. Okay, so as we wrap up here, we talked about a lot. And I think, again, this is a worthy conversation about women and our health and our hormones. And I feel like, Teresa, you and I could even go into this even more, this season or next, because I think it's something that women don't give enough credit to. And it takes not as much time. And even just the fact of being stronger. Like, I don't know about you ladies, but I don't like that I don't feel super comfortable maybe helping my husband lift something. Like, I remember when I was younger, I could easily lift something better. And I just don't like that. I want to be able to lift something easier. So even just the strength of day to day to me is why I choose to lift. So Emily, with that, Teresa, if you don't have anything else to share, again, I think this is a very worthy conversation. But what do you wish every woman knew about her hormone genius, especially in regards to relating this to muscle?
I think that women all have a very natural, deep strength of their own, no matter how physically strong they are. Edith Stein said that a woman's soul is fashioned as a shelter in which other souls may unfold. And we know that spiritually, we are mothers and shelters to other. We know physically, as physical mothers, we are shelters to our little babies. But it goes without saying that those need to be strong shelters. So we need to be spiritually strong for the souls that we're tending, and we need to be physically strong for the souls that we are tending. And I think I would like to tell women out there who are struggling with either body image or just not feeling strong that it's not selfish to invest in yourself and gaining strength. And you're only going to be benefiting the many people that you are caring for and tending to. So invest in your strength, and you'll be investing in the many people you love.
That was beautiful, Emily. Yeah, thank you so much for everything that you stated there. Thanks so much for having this conversation with us. Like we talked about, Emily, she's a registered nurse or a former registered nurse. So she has health background, but, she doesn't have a product to sell you at this point or anything like that. But I just think that's wonderful. Like, we're just, having this conversation. You have worked with a lot of women. I love that name that you had for your business, Soul Strength, because it really speaks to what you just said. Women can be strong in so many ways. And this is just another aspect, an important aspect, that women can improve their overall strength. And we just want to give that advice and support to women. So if you love this episode, give us a shout out, leave a review. We will do a future episode, I'm sure, again, on strength training. But thanks so much for being here today, Emily. And thanks, Jamie, as always, for you being with me as well.
Thank you guys so much. It's such a privilege to talk with you.
Thanks for listening to the Hormone Genius podcast. Please remember to share our podcast with your friends and family, and also follow us on social media. If you were not aware, we have a YouTube channel. So if you could like and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay in the loop with all of our latest episodes, we would appreciate that. Thank you so much for your support. We are excited to journey alongside you as you discover the beauty and the genius of your hormones.